The 31-year-old rapper died last night in a Los Angeles hospital. He did not know how he contracted AIDS.
What if everything you thought you knew about Eazy-E was just scratching the surface? Today, we're diving deep into the untold stories from the women who knew him best. And trust me, what they've shared will change how you see the legendary rapper forever.
Rap singer Eazy-E has lost his battle with AIDS just 10 days after revealing that he had the disease.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, and today we're uncovering some jaw-dropping revelations about one of hip-hop's most controversial and influential figures. From secret relationships to hidden struggles, the truth about Eazy-E is far more complex than anyone imagined.
I spend a lot of time with him, and no one knows better than me what I see and what I know about him.
So grab your headphones, hit that notification bell, and dive into this incredible story with me. The women behind the legend. When we talk about Eazy-E, we often focus on his music, his feuds, and his tragic death. But what about the women who stood by his side through it all? What about their stories, their struggles, and most importantly, what they witnessed behind closed doors? Eric Lynn Wright, better known as Eazy-E, the godfather of gangsta rap, was a man with a complicated love life that spanned multiple relationships across his short but impactful career. The whispers and rumors about his personal life have circulated for decades, but now some of the women closest to him are finally speaking out. Let's be real here. Eazy-E was known for his wild lifestyle and numerous relationships. According to various sources, he had relationships with multiple women throughout his life, leading to him having several children with different partners. But what was it really like to be romantically involved with one of hip-hop's most notorious figures? The truth is, behind the tough exterior and gangsta persona, there was a different side to Eric Wright that only his closest companions got to see. These women witnessed his vulnerabilities, his fears, and the pressures that came with being a controversial public figure in the music industry. Tomica Woods, the final love story. Perhaps the most significant relationship in Eazy-E's life was with Tomica Woods, who would become his wife in the final days of his life. Their story reads like something out of a Hollywood movie, intense, passionate, and tragically short-lived. Tomica met Eric at a nightclub in Los Angeles back in 1991. She was young, ambitious, and had no idea that this encounter would change her life forever. What started as a chance meeting between two strangers quickly blossomed into something much deeper and more meaningful. But here's where things get interesting, and this is something that many people don't know. Tomica wasn't just another girlfriend in Eazy-E's long list of romantic partners. She was different. She saw through the tough guy act and connected with the real Eric Wright underneath all the fame and controversy. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges. Dating one of the most controversial figures in hip-hop came with its own set of problems. There were constant rumors, media attention, and the pressure of being associated with someone who was frequently in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. What makes their story even more heartbreaking is the timing. Just when Eric was ready to settle down and start a new chapter of his life, tragedy struck. In March 1995, just 12 days before his death, Eric married Tomica Woods. 12 days. Let that sink in for a moment. Can you imagine the emotional roller coaster Tomica must have experienced? Going from being a newlywed to becoming a widow in less than 2 weeks? The woman who thought she was starting a beautiful journey with the love of her life suddenly found herself thrust into the position of carrying on his legacy. The hidden struggles and secrets. Now here's where the story takes a deeper turn. Over the years, various women who were close to Eazy-E have shared insights about what life was really like with him, and their revelations paint a picture that's far more complex than what the public ever saw. One of the most shocking aspects that several of his former partners have mentioned is how different Eric was in private compared to his public persona. The man who projected this tough, fearless image on stage and in interviews was dealing with a lot of internal struggles that he rarely shared with anyone. Some of his former girlfriends have described moments where Eric would open up about his fears, not just about his career or the music industry, but about deeper, more personal things. He worried about his children, about the example he was setting, and about the impact his lifestyle might have on the people he cared about. There were also the financial pressures that came with success. While everyone assumed Eric was living this lavish, carefree lifestyle, the reality was that managing money, dealing with business partners, and maintaining his position in the industry was incredibly stressful. Several women close to him have mentioned how this stress would sometimes manifest in unexpected ways. But perhaps the most revealing insight comes from stories about Eric's relationship with his family and children. Despite his reputation as a hardcore gangsta rapper, many of his former partners describe him as being incredibly devoted to his kids. He wanted to be present in their lives, even when his schedule and lifestyle made that challenging. The Michel'le connection. We can't talk about Eazy-E's relationships without addressing his connection to Michel'le, the R&B singer who was famously involved with both Eazy-E and Dr. Director. This triangle of relationships has been the subject of speculation and controversy for years, and Michel'le's own revelations have added layers to this complex story. Michel'le has been open about her experiences in the hip-hop world during the late 80s and early 90s, and her insights provide a unique perspective on what it was like to be romantically involved with these influential figures. Her relationship with Eazy-E, though perhaps not as extensively documented as her relationship with Dr. Dre, still offers valuable insights into Eric's character. What's particularly interesting about Michel'le's perspective is how she describes the different personalities of these men when they weren't in the studio or performing. According to her accounts, Eric had this protective quality about him that many people didn't see. She's mentioned instances where he showed genuine care and concern for her well-being, even during complicated times. The dynamic between these relationships also highlights the complex social environment of the West Coast hip-hop scene during this era. These romantic relationships were interconnected with business partnerships, creative collaborations, and the intense pressures of an industry that was still figuring out how to handle its newfound mainstream success. The business side of love. What many people don't realize is how Eazy-E's romantic relationships were often intertwined with his business decisions. This was not necessarily intentional, but when you're dealing with someone who's building an empire while also trying to maintain personal relationships, things get complicated fast. Tomica Woods, for example, inherited a fortune when Eric died. She inherited a business empire that included ruthless records, various investments, and a complex web of contracts and partnerships. Suddenly, this woman who had signed up to be a wife found herself in charge of a multi-million-dollar entertainment company. Several of Eric's former partners have shared stories about how his business decisions would affect their relationships. There were times when studio sessions would run late, affecting planned dates. There were instances where business conflicts would spill over into personal time. And there were always the challenges that came with dating someone whose career put them in the public eye constantly. But here's what's really fascinating. Many of these women also played unofficial advisory roles in Eric's business decisions. He valued their opinions and would often discuss major career moves with them. This wasn't just about having someone to talk to. Eric genuinely respected the insights and perspectives that the women in his life brought to the table. Some former girlfriends have mentioned how Eric would ask for their thoughts on new artists he was considering signing, or how certain business partnerships might affect his image. These casual conversations were real consultations where Eric was seeking honest feedback from people he trusted. The final days, a different perspective. Perhaps the most emotional and revealing stories come from accounts of Eric's final days. The period leading up to his diagnosis and death was incredibly difficult, not just for him, but for everyone close to him. The women who were in his life during this time witnessed a side of him that the public never saw. Tomica, being his wife during those final weeks, had a front row seat to Eric's struggle with his illness. According to various accounts, Eric was initially reluctant to seek medical help, which was consistent with his tough guy image. But privately, he was scared and confused about what was happening to his body. Several people close to him during this time have described how Eric's priorities shifted dramatically once he realized the severity of his situation. The man who had built his career on projecting strength and invincibility suddenly became focused on making sure his family would be taken care of after he was gone. What's particularly heartbreaking is how Eric apparently spent his final conscious days trying to arrange his affairs in a way that would protect the people he loved. This included making sure Tomica would have control over his business interests, ensuring his children would be financially secure, and trying to resolve some of the personal conflicts that had been weighing on him. Former girlfriends who remained in contact with him during this period have shared stories about phone calls where Eric seemed to be saying goodbye, even though he hadn't explicitly stated that he was dying. There was this sense that he was trying to make peace with his past and ensure that the people who had been important to him knew how he felt. The aftermath and legacy. After Eric's death, the women who had been part of his life found themselves dealing with grief, while also being thrust into the public spotlight in ways they had never expected. Tomica, in particular, suddenly became the face of Ruthless Records and had to navigate the complex world of music business politics while mourning her husband. Tomica aimed to preserve the legacy of Eazy-E and his music. She understood the importance of his contributions to the hip-hop world and made it her mission to keep his spirit alive. This involved reissuing his albums and ensuring that his music reached new audiences. But the other women in Eric's life also had to deal with the aftermath in their own ways. Some found themselves fielding questions from reporters and biographers who were trying to piece together Eric's story. Others had to explain to their children who their father was and why his death was such a big news story. What's remarkable is how many of these women have chosen to honor Eric's memory by focusing on the positive aspects of who he was as a person, rather than getting caught up in the controversies that surrounded his career. They've shared stories about his generosity, his sense of humor, and his genuine care for the people in his life. Several former girlfriends have mentioned how Eric would go out of his way to help people who were struggling, even when doing so didn't benefit him in any obvious way. There are stories about him helping friends and family members with financial problems, supporting aspiring artists who reminded him of his younger self, and using his influence to create opportunities for people who otherwise wouldn't have had them. These women have also been protective of Eric's children, recognizing that these kids would grow up with the complicated legacy of having a famous father who died when they were very young. Some of Eric's former partners have maintained relationships with his children, serving as additional support systems and helping to keep Eric's memory alive in positive ways. Rumors, conspiracies, and unanswered questions. Now it's time to address some of the rumors and conspiracy theories that have circulated over the years. Some of Eric's former partners have been asked about various theories regarding his death, his business relationships, and some of the controversies that surrounded his career. One of the most persistent rumors has been about the circumstances surrounding Eric's death, and whether there might have been foul play involved. Rapper BG Knock Out raps in one of his songs, "The way my big homie went out, he didn't deserve it. They say he died of AIDS, but Eazy was cold murdered. I filtered out all the bullshit with my third iris, full-blown AIDS, but Tomica ain't got the virus? I have my own theory. He went in for the common cough, or pneumonia, which was January. Then in February, diagnosed as HIV positive. Then March, full-blown AIDS and dead. I was kind of thinking, what kind of doctors did he go to? Even Eazy-E's kids that were born after he died weren't positive. Even their mothers weren't positive. Nobody was positive. I believe it's just like the mystery of who killed Tupac and who killed Biggie. Lazy bone." While most of his former girlfriends have been reluctant to engage with these conspiracy theories directly, some have shared insights about Eric's state of mind and his relationships with various people in the industry during his final months. "I have never believed the official story of my father's death," his daughter Eazy says in the 4-part limited series, "and I'm afraid of what that might be. For many years, my mom and I have been fighting to know exactly what happened. What several of them have consistently said is that Eric was aware he had enemies in the music business, but they don't believe he was living in fear or expecting anything to happen to him. Most describe him as being focused on his career and his family, rather than being paranoid about potential threats. Something just did not seem right. He died unusually fast. He did not lose weight. He was not a drug abuser. It's like one day he's fine, the next day he's dying," Eazy-E's ex says. There have also been ongoing rumors about Eric's financial situation at the time of his death and whether there were people who might have benefited from his passing. Again, while the women close to him have generally avoided speculation, they've consistently described Eric as being someone who was careful about his business relationships and who had a pretty good sense of who he could and couldn't trust. Some former girlfriends have also addressed rumors about Eric's personal life, including speculation about other relationships he might have had that weren't publicly known. Most have taken the position that Eric's private life should be respected, and that the focus should be on his contributions to music and his role as a father. The human side of a legend. Perhaps the most valuable insights that Eric's former partners have shared are the ones that show his human side, the aspects of his personality that didn't make it into interviews or documentaries. These are the stories that remind us that behind all the fame and controversy, Eric Wright was a real person with real emotions and real relationships. Multiple women have described Eric as being surprisingly romantic when he wanted to be. Despite his tough public image, he apparently enjoyed planning special dates, giving thoughtful gifts, and finding ways to show the women in his life that he cared about them. This side of his personality was something he kept very private, but it was clearly an important part of who he was. Several former girlfriends have also mentioned Eric's sense of humor and how he could be incredibly funny when he was relaxed and comfortable. They describe someone who loved to laugh, who enjoyed good conversation, and who was genuinely interested in other people's thoughts and opinions. There are also stories about Eric's insecurities and the ways he dealt with the pressures of fame. Some women close to him have described moments where he questioned whether he was making the right decisions, whether he was being a good father, and whether the image he projected to the world was authentic to who he really was. These insights paint a picture of someone who was much more complex and thoughtful than his public persona suggested. They show us a man who was trying to balance multiple responsibilities and relationships while also dealing with the unique challenges that come with being a controversial public figure. Lessons and reflections. As we look back on these stories and revelations from the women who knew Eazy-E best, what can we learn about the man behind the legend? What do these insights tell us about the pressures of fame, the complexity of relationships, and the importance of looking beyond someone's public image? One of the most consistent themes that emerges from these accounts is the importance Eric placed on family and relationships, even when his lifestyle and career made maintaining those relationships challenging. Despite having multiple partners and children with different women, he apparently made genuine efforts to be present and supportive in their lives. Another important lesson is about the difference between someone's public persona and their private reality. Eric Wright created the Eazy-E character as a way to succeed in the music industry, but that character wasn't necessarily reflective of who he was when the cameras weren't rolling. The women who knew him best have also highlighted the importance of looking at someone's actions rather than just their words or their image. While Eric's music often promoted a certain lifestyle and set of values, his actual behavior toward the people he cared about told a different story. Perhaps most importantly, these stories remind us that everyone is dealing with challenges and pressures that others might not see. Eric's success and fame didn't protect him from personal struggles, health problems, or the basic human need for love and connection. The women who shared these insights have done something valuable. They've helped us see Eric Wright as a complete person, rather than just a controversial figure or a tragic story. They've reminded us that behind every public persona is a real human being with real relationships and real emotions. The real story of Eazy-E, as revealed by the women who knew him best, shows a man far more layered and caring than the tough image he projected in public. While his career and personal life carried controversy, their accounts highlight Eric Wright as a father and partner who struggled with fame's pressures but still tried to be present for those he loved. These women aren't sharing their stories to spark more drama. They tried to paint a fuller picture of who he was, reminding us that behind the rapper Eazy-E was a man with flaws, compassion, and a genuine desire to do right by the people around him. What do you think about these revelations? Do they change how you see Eazy-E and his legacy? Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts and perspectives on these complex stories.